Hello, I'm Mick Adam Noya, and this is Channel+Crossing. There have been a multitude of shows in 2015. Indeed, you could call it the year of too much telly. There has been as many television shows as there have been so many quality programs, international and otherwise, that there just aren't enough hours in the day to watch it all. Days in the week, month, or year. I still don't acknowledge the term TV renaissance. There is as much crap on telly now as there has always been, maybe more so. The difference is that the barriers are now completely broken, thanks in large part to internet streaming services like Netflix, Amazon, and the like, and that great promoter of the arts that the music, film, and television industries do not appreciate or correctly utilize: internet piracy. Having said that, I don't remember a time, honestly, when one has been so spoiled for choice. As a result, not only is a list of top 10 TV shows of the year a tough task, but it is downright unfair. So to try and make up for that, I've put together two lists. The first is the top 5 new shows of the year, and the second is the top 10 shows of 2015. Humans is a remake of the 2012 Swedish show Real Humans, which is easily apparent since it feels more Scandi-noir than traditional sci-fi. Simple premise: robots are created to serve us and live among us. You get the idea. It's hardly a new concept, but it's very well crafted with good production design and good cinematography. It also sports an impressive cast, including William Hurt. Its foreboding atmosphere alone makes it worth a watch. Humans is an American-UK co-production between AMC and Channel 4. When it premiered, it became Channel 4's highest-rated drama in over 20 years. Daredevil was the first of 5 Marvel Comics shows to be commissioned for Netflix. It quickly set the tone for adult content with its stories, sex, and violence. While it did a good job and has a second season right around the corner, it was Jessica Jones that set itself apart as a new kind of comic book show. More HBO and Dexter than the usual fare. Along with the detective potboiler ambiance, it also touches on topics not usually found in a comic book show or film. Rape, for example. Despite some flaws, it raises the bar and leaves a hunger for the Netflix Marvel shows to come. 1992 harkens back to the good old days of corrupt Italian politics in the early 90s. Right when the shit was about to hit the proverbial fan with the so-called nationwide clean hands investigation. The main character, an ad man no less, is blatantly modeled after Don Draper. The show's structure also borrows a lot from Mad Men, including the way it handles period nostalgia. 1992 comes from Sky Italia and was broadcast on various Sky channels across Europe. It's also currently available on Netflix. More European period nostalgia, but this time set in 80s Germany. Deutschland 83 follows Martin, a young East German who is forced by the Stasi to take the identity of someone else and spy for them while the threat of nuclear war is looming. Ironically, he just wants to stay in the East and enjoy time with his girlfriend and mother, but fate has other plans. It's well written, well acted, has tense nail-biting moments, and most of all, it's fun. It also, like Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes before it, has a great period soundtrack. The show is partly Germany's answer to The Americans, but both in concept and execution, it has instantly more appeal. Deutschland 83 is the first German-language show to premiere in the US before its native country. Sundance Channel paid for that privilege. The show holds a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Mr. Robot took me very much by surprise. The biggest surprise of all is probably that it was made by the USA Network. I heard positive things, but I didn't really pay it any mind until I watched it. It's fast-paced, well-written, and takes advantage of being shot in New York with some good, slick cinematography. Rami Malek, who could pass for a younger brother of Michael Shannon, is pitch perfect as the lead. And perhaps more importantly, despite being mostly a show about hackers, it's one of the few programs that gets the culture, language, and details right. It also has something I always look forward to, a good performance from Christian Slater. He's actually a bit dialed down in this and more subtle. His time on screen feels well worn. Mr. Robot is one of the freshest and exciting new shows of 2015, and shouldn't be missed. You can't really put together a best of 2015 list without including the Jinx. It's a true crime documentary with a story that seems too outlandish to be true, but true it is. And at the center of it all is one of the strangest dudes you're ever going to find in either life or fiction, Robert Durst. The subject matter alone makes it unmissable. But, and I'm sorry if it sounds like a spoiler, this HBO documentary may very well be the cause of shedding light on cases that have eluded law enforcement for years, and possibly bringing those responsible to justice. The Jinx is slickly made and plays out like a good detective story. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is based on a 780-page novel of the same title. It was the 2004 debut of writer Suzanne Clark and was greeted with much acclaim. Neil Gaiman couldn't stop raving about it. Warner Brothers secured the rights, hoping to turn it into their next Harry Potter. The project never took off and the rights reverted back. 11 years later, BBC One airs a 7-part series based on the book, which is probably the best possible adaptation. The story is set in 18th century England, but in an alternate history where magic, true magic, exists. Although magic is no longer practiced and hasn't been for centuries. That is until two men come along, who become rival magicians and return magic to England, for better or worse. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is lavish, imaginative, and fun, with some dark moments. It has excellent acting and boasts a production that is on the same scale as Game of Thrones. It is not to be missed, even if you're not normally a fan of the subject matter. I confess, Thunderbirds Are Go is a guilty pleasure. But what a pleasure. It is, of course, based on the 1965 classic show from Jerry Anderson. Except this time, the puppets have been substituted with digital characters. However, most of the practical effects, sets, and vehicles are, like the original, models. They are lovingly made this time around by Weta Workshop, the effects house that brought you Lord of the Rings. The effects for Thunderbirds and the care taken is clearly visible on screen. Despite some grumbling from obsessed fans of the original, this new Thunderbirds is a very worthy successor and is ready for a new generation of fans. Nordic noir has become so big that film and television that falls into the genre are no longer exclusive to Scandinavia. Fortitude is a big-budget, bold production shot on location in Iceland with a big-name international cast. The cast includes Christopher Eccleston, Jessica Raine, Michael Gambon, and Stanley Tucci, to name a few. It also marks the return of Sophie Grable, who has been absent from television since the last season of the original Killing. The story is tightly constructed and does such a good job of obscuring the kind of show it is, that it keeps the suspense on a high until the very end. Is it a detective story? Or a thriller with supernatural elements? Or horror? Or a science fiction? Or all the above? Fortitude is off to a hugely impressive start with huge numbers watching it across European markets. It also did well in the US, at least well enough, considering it aired on a new channel called Pivot that most people, even now, have probably never heard of. If you haven't heard of this show, or just haven't seen it yet, seek it out as soon as possible. It's hard to find someone who doesn't think Breaking Bad is a great show. Truth be told, I can't put it on my list of favorites. There are some great things in it, to be sure. Bryan Cranston, of course, is fantastic, and the writing is pretty solid. But there are, to my mind, some glaring flaws. Chief among them is Aaron Paul. He's not a bad actor, but his whole homeboy act is seriously grating. Other than that, my gripes are mainly just some story and dialogue repetition. I'm not even going to bring up Anna Gunn's wife character, which isn't particularly dynamic. Putting all that aside, Better Call Saul offers everything that is good about Breaking Bad. The writing, the humor, the location, and for my money, a more interesting lead character. Bob Odenkirk, Michael McKean, and the rest of the cast are fabulous. Better Call Saul returns for its second season in February.
Fill me up, Chandler. Put it in me.
Chandler's my youngest. Loves it. Huh.
The Return continues its excellence with its much-anticipated second season. The first season began with a small French town in the mountains, where some of its former residents, people who mostly died from some sort of tragedy, come back. The second season picks up right where the first one left off. Along with the old, we meet some new characters, and the mystery surrounding these strange events take on greater scope. Les Revenants, or The Returned, is beautiful, haunting, well-written, and features a wonderful soundtrack from the band Mogwai. In spite of Blade Runner, there have been very few adaptations that reflect the quality of Philip K. Dick's work, but Amazon's production of The Man in the High Castle nails it. The story takes place in 1962 America, but it is an America that saw the United States and its allies lose the Second World War, and now it finds it occupied by Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. The show follows characters from both the Japanese-controlled West Coast and the Nazi-controlled East Coast. The title refers to someone who is circulating a film that shows newsreel footage of not only our reality, but others as well. The Man in the High Castle was developed by Frank Spotnitz of X-Files fame. He does an excellent job of not only putting together a good adaptation, but also fleshing out characters that were less drawn in the book. The production design and digital effects, while at times very noticeable as effects, excel at showing this possible world come to life. The actors are solid and well cast, and Rufus Sewell is particularly good and chilling as the American Nazi commander. The show is not only one of the best shows of 2015, but possibly its best science fiction show. Aussies and Kiwis were inundated with various media events related to Anzac Day in 2015, more so than usual. That probably has something to do with the fact that 2015 is the 100th anniversary of Gallipoli. Out of all the film and television throughout the year, it is a series from 9 Network Australia that stands out in my mind as the perfect embodiment of the subject. It is for Australia what Band of Brothers was for the US. While the series captures many details and nuance of the Gallipoli campaign, from beginning to end, it also features good writing, beautiful imagery, and some standout performances from up-and-coming Australian actors. Most notably, the lead, Kobe Smith McPhee. If you only want to see one program on the subject, Gallipoli is it. The Last Panthers wears the skin of a heist film, but is in fact a complex political drama and well-paced action thriller. The series throws a spotlight on some of the darker corners of Europe and explores a connection between certain governments and organized crime. There's also a well-crafted story that focuses on 3 characters in the world they belong to. The Last Panthers features a stellar international cast including Samantha Morton and John Hurt. Good writing, tight direction, and a title track composed for the series and performed by David Bowie.
But of Cardinal Wolsey, I say only this: he has brought his fall on himself. He's drawn all to himself: land, money, and titles. He's always had a greed for ruling over other men.
Cardinal's a public man. Would you have him shrink from a public role?
Oh, I think it's a little late to read the Cardinal a lesson in humility. His real friends have read it long ago and been ignored.
And you count yourself a real friend, do you? I'll tell him. And by the blood of Christ, Lord Chancellor, he'll find it a consolation as he sits in exile and wonders why you slander him to the king.
Gentlemen,
No, let's
please.
have this straight. Thomas here says, I'd spend my life in the church if I had a choice. I'm devoted to things of the spirit. I care nothing for wealth. The world's esteem is nothing to me. So how is it I come back to London and find you become Lord Chancellor? Lord Chancellor. What's that? A fucking accident?
Wolf Hall is not a period drama, and the direction from Peter Kosminski clearly reflects that. It's a political chess game with strong players. The series is based on the critically acclaimed Man Booker Prize-winning novels by Hilary Mantel, Wolf Hall and Bring Up the Bodies, with the third and final book, The Mirror and the Light, in the works. The story takes place during the Tudor period, under the reign of King Henry VIII. While Tudor history has been exhaustively explored in plays, melodrama, and history books, Wolf Hall approaches the subject as never before. The degree of fiction in these novels can be argued, as the exploration of characters takes precedence over so-called historical fact. Nonetheless, Mantell spent half a decade deep in research. One of the things that makes this piece unique is its focus. Rather than following King Henry, Anne Boleyn, or Henry's other wives, as is usually the case, the story is seen through the eyes of Thomas Cromwell. He is a man that has been predominantly presented in history books and melodrama, until as recently as the last 50 years, as a snake-like villain. Cromwell, as depicted by Hilary Mantel, is a pragmatic lawyer, banker, and businessman. His biggest client is Cardinal Wolsey, Archbishop of York, and then eventually, King Henry of England. He is a worldly, highly intelligent, self-made man who came from nothing, in a time when such things rarely happened. The part of Cromwell is fully inhabited by stage actor, director, and playwright Mark Rylance. While perhaps not as well known among the greater television and film-watching public, he is certainly famous among big-name actors and directors that have called him the greatest actor of his generation. Steven Spielberg has been trying to enlist him for the last 20 years, and finally succeeded with his last film, Bridge of Spies, and his next, The BFG. Royland's performance is mesmerizing and extraordinary, and easily the best of the year, in either film or television. Cromwell is presented naturalistically, with no theatricality. His presence is so powerful that his performance comes through with just as much intensity without dialogue as with, if not more so. The accompanied actors are also impressive. The supporting cast is well populated with the likes of Mark Gatiss, Jessica Raine, soon-to-be Spider-Man Tom Holland, Joanne Whalley, Saskia Reeves, Bernard Hill, and of course, the hard-working and always reliable Anton Lesser. Stand-up performances include Jonathan Pryce as Cardinal Wolsey. His portrayal is heartfelt and has some great interactions and chemistry with Mark Rylance Cromwell. Damian Lewis as King Henry is an inspired casting choice. He's deliciously cruel and appropriately despotic. Claire Foy is pitch perfect and electric as Anne Boleyn. She dominates every scene she is in, and her final scene in both direction and acting is a thing of quiet beauty. Wolf Hall excels in many ways, and its music is no exception. Veteran composer Debbie Wiseman created a memorable and hypnotic soundtrack that you'll probably find yourself humming. The difficult task of adapting and condensing 2 long books fell to Peter Strong. While working closely with the author, does a brilliant job. Director Peter Kosminski and director of photography Graham Finney worked very hard to capture 16th century Tudor lighting. All scenes were shot in natural light and candlelight. This was achieved in part by a £20,000 authentic beeswax candle budget and the Aeroflex Alexa camera. The results are quite remarkable, and as well as its beauty, captures a real sense of the past. It is a sign of the times that a Machiavellian-like figure can be so popular as a main character in a story. But while Kevin Spacey depicts his Frank Underwood as an over-the-top performance within itself in House of Cards, it is Mark Rylance that portrays Thomas Cromwell as a complex, realistic human being, with all the strengths, flaws, vulnerabilities, successes, and failures that any one of us possess. 2015 offers a rich tapestry of many good shows from all over the world to watch, and the sheer volume of quality work is staggering. Nonetheless, Wolf Hall is a series that succeeds on every level, and offers a one-of-a-kind performance from Mark Rylance, and stand-up performances from the rest, especially Claire Foy. Which is why Wolf Hall is our #1 pick for the best show of 2015. That's me done, and that's it for 2015. If you like what you just saw, click thumbs up and subscribe. If you have any thoughts on the list, or maybe you have a list of your own, leave some comments below. As for 2016, we are already off to a promising start, but let's find out.